Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December 2022 meeting of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm the president. We have an important program this evening. It's going to be very interesting, and we appreciate everybody's attendance. We have a little association business, federation business to do before we proceed. The first thing we do is we approve the agenda for the evening. It's on page 2 of the newsletter. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The agenda is approved. The second thing that we do is we approve the minutes from the November meeting. The meeting of November 14th, the minutes were put in the newsletter on page 18. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the general meeting of November?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
It's been first and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. The third thing we do is we consider a treasurer's report. Mr. Treasurer, do you have a report for us?
I have a report for almost full 6 months. We've received membership dues of $686. We've had expenses of $651, giving us a net income of just under $35 for the period. In the last 30 days, we've only collected $285 worth of dues. If there are any questions, give me a call or ask me the question later on. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jerry. We appreciate your work, and special shout out to Jackie Boko for her good work on the newsletter. We commend everybody's attention to the newsletter. It's at montgomerycivic.org. And in that newsletter, you'll find information about the incoming county council, article for describing tonight's program with Chief Jones, and a really excellent article that Elizabeth Joyce wrote talking about the Albernacy Council. So please look at our newsletter at montgomerycivic.org. We'll dispense with our normal announcements, and we will proceed directly to our program. In addition to having Chief Jones this evening, we're also going to get a briefing by Senator Ben Kramer, District 19, who's introduced some legislation that many of us are interested in. So after Chief Jones makes his presentation, he will entertain some questions. And after that period, we hope that Senator Kramer will join us and discuss his proposed legislation affecting MCPD, among other things. So with that, let me introduce our chief. Chief Marcus Jones was a former, has been in Montgomery County Police for many, many years. Many of us know him when he served as a commander for the 3rd District, which is where I live in Silver Spring, from downtown Silver Spring up to the Burtonsville area. He's always been very gracious with his time. He's always been very candid in his conversation with us about public safety in the district and in the county. This is not the first time he's joined the Civic Federation, and we're so happy to have him join us. He'll answer questions after. In the meantime, let me turn it over to Chief Jones, and I am going to put a spotlight on him. And please, Chief.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Alan. And thank you to the Montgomery Civic Federation for inviting me back. It's great to be with you all again virtually. And there has been seems to be a lot going on in Montgomery County. So I want to be able to share some thoughts. I know there's lots of questions, and I want to be able to try to answer those questions as best as possible. So I want to give just quickly to highlight some things that I think that have been already shared with me that has some interest, and then again I will get to those questions that may be in the queue and how we are addressing some of those concerns. As it relates to crime trends, this year, 2022, has been an interesting year as it relates to crime, as we have clearly seen many individuals in our community that have come out of the COVID pandemic. There's a lot of things happening, as people are trying to get back to a sense of normalcy. But there's been some things that have been very troubling, that continue to be troubling as it relates to crime. I am pleased to report out that last year we had a high of homicides. We had 35 in the county last year in 2021, but this year, fortunately, at this point, we're low. We're much below that. We are at 21 currently, and I'll talk about some cases that, particularly those that have been in the news recently, to give some highlights and give some conversation about that. As it relates to other crimes that are going on, particularly serious crimes, there are significant upticks in robberies that are going on all throughout Montgomery County. This is something that we have worked on very hard to focus upon the robberies that we're having, a slight increase that's occurring across many parts of the county. For example, in the Silver Spring district, we see a 23% jump in our robberies, and these include commercial and non-commercial type robberies. And one of the types of robberies that are really concerning to many people in our community are carjackings, where we have had a significant increase in carjackings throughout the county. We're up 25%, and this is a regional problem that's also occurring in the District of Columbia. It's occurring as well as in Prince George's County, our neighboring jurisdictions, and there are times when we're finding cross-jurisdictional investigations that are being held because we're finding that we may have a carjacking that may have occurred here in Montgomery County, and we find that the vehicle was actually dumped in another portion of the region, such as the District of Columbia, as well as Prince George's County. We've also identified subjects that have been involved in multiple crimes in multiple jurisdictions. So it has required us to really put together a task force that we've been working with in order to be able to successfully identify as well as prosecute those who have been involved. I think one of the more disturbing things for me, looking at this particular crime trend, is that it's not primarily just adults that are committing these crimes. We're finding in many cases juveniles as young as the age of 14. And in some cases, generally they're around the ages of 16 and 17 that are committing these offenses. And that's been something that I think that we, as all of us in the law enforcement community, are really trying to find out, why is this occurring? There is no significant reason why. When we talk about, there's no money value in individuals stealing these cars because they're not doing anything with them. It's like it's a challenge. It may be a ride back to a particular community for whatever reason, but we're seeing it way too often. And in some cases, we are seeing some adults that are, again, committing these crimes. And again, these are crimes of opportunity. So we're reminding community members that at all times, as you're out shopping, as you're out visiting banks, as you're out getting gas, to be very aware of your surroundings. And we talk about this not only during the late night hours, but we also talk about it at all times of the day and night, because it's vitally important that everybody be aware of their surroundings as a safety mechanism, that if you see something that doesn't feel right, we would highly encourage that you contact us so that we can actually look into it and potentially investigate it if that's what you think is necessary. So, and another crime that we're starting to see, we have seen it. It has gone down. Well, it's gone up slightly, I should say, and that is we've had a significant amount of shootings in the county. Guns are still a major problem in Montgomery County. It is a problem. We have seized more guns this year that I have ever seen in the course of my career. Ghost guns are, of course, these are the privately manufactured firearms. We are seeing a significant jump in them. At this point, we've seized nearly 180 ghost guns this year, and we're well above the actual. We're 2 times the amount of guns that above 2 times the amount of guns we seized last year, and that's a troubling trend that we see these illegal guns that are in our communities that we are seizing on crime scenes. We're seizing a lot of illegal guns out of our vehicles from traffic stops. And to add to that, we have had, again, an increased number of shootings that have occurred in the county that we either call them contact shootings, which means that someone was actually struck by a bullet as a result of someone firing a gun, or that we have what we call non-contact, where we have evidence that shots were fired in a particular neighborhood. And this is happening in various parts of our county. There's not any given area that this is a specific problem. There are disputes that we are finding that it doesn't take much, where individuals now think it's the best way to resolve a dispute is now in order to pull out a handgun and in some cases fire that handgun at individuals. And that's very troubling, to say the least. So this is something that we're really, we've been focusing our strategies on getting many of these illegal guns off of our streets, working with the state's attorney's office to be a little bit more proactive, particularly with those who are repeat offenders and those who are prohibited from having firearms in the first place. Because what we're finding is that it's, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, individuals are choosing to arm themselves when they have been prohibited by our courts from possessing a firearm. The other one crime that I wanted to focus on that has been increasing throughout most of the county, and that is our burglaries. And these are residential as well as commercials. Why is that happening? Well, one reason we believe it's happening is because people are now going back to work more regularly and are not at home as they were during the pandemic. There were significant drops in burglaries during the course of the pandemic because a lot of people were actually at home working from home. That is not always the case now. And so we're starting to see commercial and residential burglaries start to rise throughout the county. And we, again, work very actively with our commanders in order to come up with strategies to address these trends and to focus on how do we address these particular burglaries that are occurring throughout the county. So that's that for the crime trends. The one crime trend we always talk about, and I'll leave it here, that is actually improved to a large degree, and that's our theft from autos. We're seeing that those numbers are going down. I think we're continuing the message, and we're thankful communities that continue to get the word out to remind everyone to please lock your doors, particularly during the holiday season. For those who continue to go out to our malls and to our shopping areas, we remind people to please make sure that they lock their Christmas and holiday gifts in the car, that they can't be seen. Particularly, be well versed if they could place them in the trunk. I think that those are your best options. But again, we've seen these crimes go down, and that's something that is very interesting and very important to us as we continue to strategize. Again, and this is a regional problem, but the more that we can deter these individuals from being involved in these types of cases, the better it is for all of us. So that goes around, that's my sort of wrap up about crime trends. I do want to talk a little bit about recruitment. We have, again, over the past few years have had some challenging times. I think that it's not uncommon now in today's environment, and I'm sure if people are paying attention to much discussion about the workforce, is that there are many professions that are struggling in hiring individuals to assist them with their particular professions. And policing has been actually struggling with this nationwide. And we have Montgomery County Police have also been struggling with recruitment over the past few years since I've been the chief. And we have come up with some new strategies really to try to increase the number. So if I could share with you, our last class that graduated, we were only able to graduate 11 members of that particular class, the lowest number probably in my 37 years of being on this department. And much of that has had to do with really much of the nationwide discussion about law enforcement, and that many people have been very fearful of actually getting involved in the profession for a variety of reasons. And excuse me. And so with that being said, we really did have to figure out ways to strategize and come up with new processes and new ideas in order to really to have an effective campaign for recruitment. So we have really kind of pushed back our classes. We were doing at least 2 classes a year. We've slowed that down to really work hard at finding the right people to do the job. And in the midst of this, we have really, one of the things the county executive did and the county council was that there was an increase in starting salaries, which was a major boost for us this year. And even prior to that being finalized, we were able to actually go out and we actually started this particular class that started in August. They actually, we had 29 applicants and police officer candidates that started with that particular academy. Out of that, not only did we get 29 very good candidates, but we also have 50% of them are women, which is something that we've never been able to accomplish during the course of recruitment. Excuse me. So currently this class is in, and we will, I think in the end, we will probably be able to graduate the majority of them. Not all of them have been successful thus far, but it does get, and generally during the course of any police academy, there may be individuals that resign along the way because of one reason or another. But at the end of the day, I think this is showing us that we are starting to get more applications. We are starting to actually hire many of our candidates much earlier, starting them almost in an intern type role before the academy, because the competition in the Washington, DC metropolitan area is very tough. So that's something that we really need to focus on. Next up, I just recently, I want to talk a little bit about the effective law enforcement for all audit that was done. When I first took over as chief, I had recommended to the county executive to conduct this audit. I thought it was very important for us to really kind of get a really an outside look to see how we can make some significant improvements in our delivery of law enforcement services and looking internally. And there were some things that came out of it that that I believe that were what I expected. There were things that we really needed to improve upon. And much of that really came around data collection. And it's not been lost on me, even when I took over, that we were well behind in our records management system. We knew that we needed a new record management system in order to be able to capture more data that the community has demanded. And so that is actually that system is now in the midst of, it just completed the procurement process. We know that we should have this up and running by January 2024. We have a vendor that was a long process that we had to go through, but we think is going to be the best product for us. We also knew that there were some significant issues about our crisis intervention and mental health response in our community. And so this particular audit allowed a much deeper look into how we respond and how we can improve upon that. It also expanded out to our health and human services. I believe someone was asking a question in the chat about the restoration center. The restoration center is in the midst of being developed. The county has received funding, but at the gist of it is the fact that it's at a very early stage. There's been no location that's been finalized. We are working with our partners in health and human services, along with fire rescue, to really focus on, working on not always involving the police in many of these calls. The mobile crisis teams have been improved. There's been an increase in numbers of the mobile crisis teams on the northern end of the county as well as the southern end. And there are times when they are reaching out to us when they feel like there's a need for their safety to have police co-respond with them. But we are working hand in hand to address many of these problems. And along the way, there's de-escalation. And the best part about this report comes from the fact that there's going to be there's oversight. We're working with the contractor, Effective Law Enforcement for All, and they're experts. In fact, their expert in the mental health field was just with us a couple of weeks ago as we were presenting a crisis intervention team class for our officers as well as people at our correctional facility, and as well as some additional counselors as we continue to grow the program. So we are getting great advice, but again, a lot of the things that are in the actual audit are some of the things that we have already begun to work on because we've been working with them over the past couple of years. And there are some things we have already completed, and there's some things that we still have some work to do. So we think that overall, I think this will be a very good day for the county for us to continue to improve our police department overall. One other thing I do want to highlight is the fact that what we've been seeing recently, which is troubling over much of what I think is what many people believe in the county to be as a result of much of the national discourse and how people are being treated. We are seeing a significant increase in hate crimes. Particularly, we're seeing them in the Jewish community. We're seeing a vast majority of vandalism, swastikas that are appearing in other parts of the county at an all-time high. And so we are very concerned about that. We're working with many of our communities in order to be able to address that. We think that is something that this department takes very seriously. We investigate every hate crime, every bias incident. It is a sign, and we do our very best to try to identify those who may be involved. And what we are asking, and we continue to ask, is not only are we engaged in that, but we want the community to make sure that they are effectively communicating with us and sharing if they have any information to share in order to help us to solve these problems. So, but again, I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's a major issue that is of concern. So recently we've had some incidents that have occurred in the county, and I'll just share some brief updates with that. Excuse me. First and foremost, I know we had a shooting in right on New Hampshire Avenue at the White Oak gas station at the Dash-In Shell at New Hampshire and Lockwood. Very troubling. I will say, again, when we talk about gun crimes and disputes, that was clearly identified that it was a dispute via the footage that was shown to us. And very troubling to see an individual pull out a handgun in order to try to just resolve that dispute. And then, of course, if you have been hearing the news that it was very unfortunate that was very fortunate that our detectives identified our suspect very quickly, put the case together, and was able to actually obtain a search warrant to and an arrest warrant for him for that horrible homicide. Excuse me. And then on as we served the search warrant, we would later unfortunately find a deceased female inside the apartment with a badly decomposed body, which meant that she had been there for some time. And we also identified the fact that she was nearly 9 months pregnant on top of that. So that's a very disturbing. The court today is actually granting this individual a mental evaluation so they can determine how they should proceed with that case. So in all of these cases that we have, that center around any type of shooting that we would have, the question I know seems to be is like, what are some of the efforts? What are some of your community policing strategies? We continue to work with many of our communities, such as the Enclave as an example. And this is an example of, unfortunately, we were not able to prevent this. I mean, this is something that I don't know if anybody would have been able to prevent this type of a crime from happening. But I will say that, it's really good to know that we have excellent video. We have excellent cooperation from many of our partners. These are the things that we really need in these communities. Over the past few months, we've been doing a lot of outreach with some of these communities that in order to be able to try to keep the crime level down. An area like White Oak, for example, it has been traditionally one of our busiest crime areas. But I will tell you, over the course of the 2022, I've been very proud of the leadership by Commander McBain, because they've actually presented strategies to help to keep the crime level down. And for much of the year until really about 2 months ago, the 3rd District had no homicides and had shootings were down considerably in many of the areas where we've known that we've had problems before. And much of that has just been around how we've actually strategized and worked hand in hand with many of our community partners in order to help to eliminate some of these problems. We're still, even though our numbers are down overall, our department, like right now, we are about 125 officers below our strength. We have allocated and made sure that our district stations are keeping up with the pace of work, that we're not going below the levels of our officers needed to respond and that are needed in particularly our higher crime areas. We also, some of the other strategies we utilize that normally when we have specialized positions like detectives and other positions throughout the department, a lot of those officers that are selected for many of those types of jobs, and that's a career development or career advancement track that many of our officers utilize to want to become a detective, to want to become a traffic officer or some other and unique position. They come from our patrol division primarily. And so I made the decision earlier this year, knowing that we were losing officers as a result of retirements and resignations, that I would in turn, I would not fill some of those detective positions, and we would have to take on a little bit of the caseload, but that again has not impacted the work of many of our officers in the county. Also, I'll just talk about briefly that I know we had a shooting at the Summit Hills Apartments a couple of weeks ago. I will just say that we're making some, and that was a homicide. We're making some advancements on those cases again. This was a case that we think was a targeted event. We don't think this was a stranger based on our investigation. And in many of these cases, particularly some of these shootings, we're finding that many of our individuals know each other. These are not always stranger events. And so this is something that we think it's very important. So Alan, I don't know if you want me to pause here and answer a few questions, or if there's anything else specific that you would like me to speak about.
Thank you so much, Chief Jones. We do appreciate your participation as always. There are a few questions in the chat. And Jackie, do you want to ask the questions, or shall I ask the questions? Okay,
How
well,
about you, Alan?
thank you, Jackie. The first thing everybody should know is that appears that we have a representative from the press. Fox News is joining our program tonight, and our meetings are public, so we welcome Fox News. But we have lots of questions, and one of the first questions is, what accounts for the 56% increase in drug-related crimes over the past year? And while that question is sort of on the table, one of my neighbors who couldn't participate this evening had this question, which was that he believes that many members of our community are having problems with the smell of cannabis in the downtown areas, and that some of them are not going to the downtown areas. Their parents won't permit their kids to go to the downtown areas. And I'm wondering what your thought is about that, considering that we're looking at the legalization of cannabis over the next couple of months.
Okay, all right, thanks, Alan. I think it's twofold when we talk about the increase of our drug-related crimes. Of course, as everyone knows, that Maryland decriminalized marijuana a few years back. So, you know, if you are caught with small amounts of marijuana, you are literally given a citation. And you know, we seize the marijuana, but that's the gist of a $25 or $50 ticket for individuals who are caught with marijuana. I think that when we talk about a drug problem, the main drug that we've been focusing on, though, we still come across amounts of marijuana in a variety of different ways of encounters with individuals on traffic stops, as well as in other incidents of when we are addressing individuals. But what we do know is there have been a large increase of fentanyl that's been in our community. And this is one of the things that we have been focusing on because fentanyl is a very dangerous drug that unfortunately are still killing way too many members of our community. You know, the numbers, the good news for us is that we've seen a decrease in overdoses to some degree over this year, but and we've seen a decrease in deaths to some degree, but we're still not where we want. We're still seeing way too many young people under the age of 18 that are using fentanyl. So that's a problem, and it's something that we need to really continue to focus on, and we are putting a lot of our focus into that, and we're not so much putting our focus on from a investigative standpoint from marijuana distributors. This whole issue about really going out in public and smelling marijuana, this is becoming way too often of a that's happening all across areas, beginning in Montgomery County. But if you go to DC, you go to other places that I visit often, Baltimore or other, you're also seeing the same thing. And I think where we see where the legalization of marijuana, that's going to be more of a problem. Is it still illegal for people to smoke in public? Yes. Is it going to be a challenge for law enforcement to actually address those issues with individuals? The answer is yes. You know, because when we look at much of the impact that we have of, and sometimes the disproportionate numbers of people of color who are utilizing some of these drugs. And again, we know that there's a large contingency of individuals that utilize marijuana. The question is, are they using it even as the state of Maryland has now began this process of in July when marijuana becomes legal in the state? The question is going to be, what's going to be the overall impact of individuals smoking marijuana out in the public or in places that will disrupt normal, really communities and how the quality of life will be impacted. I think that's a larger question that I think we're going to have to talk to many of our legislators about. We're beginning to have those conversations. We're also beginning to have these conversations about the impact of individuals who are smoking marijuana and how that's going to impact them driving on our roadways. We are seeing, again, an increase of individuals that are smoking marijuana and who are driving. And it's, again, these are new laws that will have to be established because drug driving, of course, is against the law. But now in the way that the legislature has now defined cannabis, what that looks like, those laws will have to be adjusted. But we are really well out in front. We have one of the best experts in the country who does an excellent training program on individuals who are driving under the influence of cannabis. So that's something that we really need to continue to work towards.
We have lots of questions in the chat, and then we'll get to some of the people who have their hands raised, but I'd like to do some of the questions in the chat. Tony Hausner, Chief, has asked about school violence. He says in January, there was a significant level of school violence. What is the situation now?
Yes, Tony, I would say that our school violence numbers have significantly gone down. I'm feeling good about that. I don't want to I don't want to ruin my luck, but I really feel like there's been some very positive outcomes with our community engagement officers and working within our school systems. I think our school systems and our police department are getting acclimated to this new process. And I think there is a visibility part here that's impactful, that our officers are now being seen around our schools more than they were during the period in January. And that is, again, working with each particular high school, each school cluster, each principal, looking at what are the demands that they're having. And I think as a result of that, that's having some impact. So I'm pleased for the fact that we're not seeing as many school shootings or school violence as we have seen, as we saw earlier in the calendar year. But this school year, we are seeing a significant drop in those types of cases.
And that's good news. There's a question in here about the 911 answering time, and somebody has commented that they called 911 today and was in the please wait queue for 2 minutes. Do you have any observations on the situation with 911?
So we keep statistics on all of our 911 calls that we review monthly. In fact, tomorrow morning, I'll have a sit down with our emergency communications center. We know that there are times that when there's extremely high volumes of calls that will generally push towards a longer response time. And that's unfortunate, but that's a reality because there's times when, I'll give an example, like let's say the night that the plane crashed, or we might have a big event. Sometimes we may have multiple events that are occurring in our, the numbers of calls outweigh the number of call takers that we have. And so again, until they can really kind of work through those calls and get those calls dispatched, can sometimes be a little bit of a delay. So, and one of the things we really emphasize with people is, again, there are people that continue to call our 911 center utilizing 911 when it's not a true emergency. And they should be calling a non-emergency number, which is 301-279-8000. And so there's a difference between a true emergency where, where life and death is at stake here versus where we want the police to get there as quickly as possible. We totally understand that, but we also have a non-emergency line, and we have call takers available for that as well. Again, and those do take, the 911 calls take preference, but there are, again, a lot of times people will clog our systems calling 911 when they should have called the non-emergency line. So, but we again, we look at that data, and we see areas of improvement. We see where there's things that we need to work on. We will focus on that, but I probably would assess that based on what I'm hearing, it sounded like probably called during a very busy time that was occurring.
Chief, one more question in chat, and then we'll go to Carol Ann and Jim Zepp. Liz Joyce asked a question about crime in downtown Silver Spring and the discussions about closing establishments earlier. Some of them are open quite late. I'm wondering what's going on with that issue.
Yeah, so I know the county executive is about to propose legislation, particularly about areas that have late nightlife that will be centered around really closing some of these locations at an earlier time, and also making sure that these establishments that are staying open late do have a security plan that includes having their own security, having things that we as a police department will be working with them to make sure that those plans are in place in order to allow them to continue to open up late or stay open late. And again, some of these establishments are having some impact. We have been working vehemently over the past year, working with many of the business owners in downtown Silver Spring who have restaurants and bars and who are staying open late at night. But I will say from a very positive standpoint, we have had some success in their cooperation, making sure that they do have some security plans in place. If you have also noticed, or you may not have if you're not down there often, but on Georgia Avenue, we've also placed a camera right in the middle of the central business district. It is in the middle of the median on Georgia Avenue. It has a blue light that goes off constantly, and that camera is assisting us. We're able to view this real time to address some of the crimes that are occurring in that corridor. These are some of the things that we'll be utilizing more from a technology standpoint, and again, working with many of the businesses with their camera systems in order to be able to help to alleviate some of the problems that we're having. And we're going to be doing this all throughout the county where we have particularly communities that have nightlife. For example, in North Bethesda, we have Pike and Rose as an example. So it won't just be Silver Spring, but there'll be other areas along the county that we'll be focusing on.
Thank you, Chief. We'll take the first live question from Carol Ann and Jim Sepp. I'd ask you to keep your questions short because there are lots of people have questions. So Jim and Carol Ann.
Well, a few years ago, both nationally and locally, CompStat was a very popular addressing crime. I attended a couple of sessions down here at the county executive's office building. Is that still being done?
Yes, we have our crime stat meeting on every Tuesday morning internally within the department in order for us to come up with strategies to address our crime trends. That is a very, very effective tool that we utilize in order to help to keep our crime as low as we keep it. With many of our commanders reporting out, all of our 6 district commanders report out what is going on in their districts, as well as the investigative directors that are providing updates to cases, and as well as others who are providing input as well as the assistant chiefs and myself, making sure that these strategies are being implemented and being effective.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing was that.
No, Jim, one
Council-
question apiece, Jim. Let's move on to Eric
Well,
Cathcart,
if you
please.
don't want to talk solutions, that's fine.
Eric?
Chief Jones, thank you for joining us. A couple of quick comments before I ask my question. Thank you for addressing the fentanyl issue. I think that the dialogue about cannabis is ridiculous when we see that fentanyl is killing one person every 7 minutes across this country. This is huge. This is much bigger than cannabis. So I think we need to keep the lens on the most dangerous thing, which is fentanyl. The other one is that I totally agree. I think that it's ridiculous that we don't close down Silver Spring at night with the hookah bars. There's no reason why they should be open all night. But those are my two comments. Those of us who are leading our communities in the trenches, I've got my finger on the pulse of my community, and the two things that I struggle with daily is really a quality of life and mental health in my community. I don't know who to turn to. I really don't know who to turn to when I see something that disturbs me. Do I go to code? Do I go to county code? Do I go to District 3? When something is in the gray, I just don't know who to go to when I see something very, very odd. And I think it's an HHS situation. And I'm at a loss to know how can I help as the leader of my community. Who do I turn to? And the other part of that is communication. I think we need to do a better job, especially with the leaders, the civic leaders of our line or a chain of communication. How do we reach our police officer? How do I reach District 3? Commander McBain has been fabulous, by the way, in responding to my emails. And I understand that the police are not required through the police union to respond to emails, but Commander McBain does respond. And I'm very grateful for that. But sometimes there's a situation where I really feel like I need to hit the gas pedal and get to my police department quicker. Can you please make a few comments to that?
Sure. So Eric, regarding, situations centered around mental health, one thing I would highly encourage you to utilize is to contact the crisis center. They are really the driving force behind the mobile crisis teams that are being sent out into the community to address any problems that are happening in real time. And again, if those crisis teams, depending upon the situation, if they feel like they can handle it, which again, this is where we really are pushing more of that work towards them and not involving the police, then they will handle it. If they think that there is a situation that it may require a co-response, they will make that decision and they will contact us and we'll be more than happy to respond to them. They are monitoring our police radios and our officers are utilizing them as well when they are encountering situations that the mobile crisis team needs to really respond to, and it's not a police matter. So I would encourage you to utilize that resource in that way. As it relates to, one of the things I have always stressed to all of my commanders is to be able to create liaisons within their own district. So in your communities, you are assigned to a particular beat. You have a police, you have beat officers that work in your particular communities. For example, the 3rd district, there's 3 sectors. There's the Henry sector, there's the George sector, there's the Ida sector. And all of those officers are generally, particularly the day work, all work the same hours, those the sergeants and their officers. And so I would suggest to you that have the ability to talk to Commander McBain and meet those individuals who are the supervisors and the beat officers in your particular community. The second persons that I would highly recommend that have always been useful in our communities have been our community services officers. As many of you know, or did know, Joy Patil who spent many years in the 3rd District. Joy's really in the midst of retiring, and now Glenda Joseph, I know Glenda was there when I was there in the 3rd District, because I put her there to work with Joy, and again, to provide some additional access and resources to community. So there's a two-way street, and you also have your lieutenants that work under Commander McBain and who oversee those sectors as well. When you feel as if none of those individuals were giving you the kind of response you need, I highly recommend you to know and to feel free to reach out to those lieutenants. But we expect everyone to answer their emails and from the community and be very responsive to the best of their ability to provide good customer service.
Thank you. Very quickly, I did try to reach our community service officer, our new community service officer, and the phone message rolled over to Joy Blue. So, and I know she's retired. So again, it gets back to communication. I'm looking for a way to make sure that we have a better line of communication. Thank you, sir.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Joe Awkward.
Yes, good evening, Chief. A question. In July this year, there was a total of 3 churches in Bethesda on Old Georgetown Road that were, one church pews were set on fire, tombstones were turned over, crosses were thrown into Old Georgetown Road. The only coverage was there was a short statement made that it involved underage youth and it would be handled privately in the courts. Have you heard anything further about those 3 cases?
So I do know that we did find the individual that was responsible.
Right.
He is a juvenile male, at least he was at the time. And his case was submitted to the juvenile courts for adjudication. Those cases are not made public
Right.
because of his age. I am not privy to the adjudication once it gets into the court system.
Right.
Even as the chief, we make those referrals to our Department of Juvenile Services, and then they move those cases forward to the state's attorney's office, should they see it fit in order to have it addressed.
Oh.
So necessarily think there will ever be a public response to the actual final adjudication of those particular cases.
All right, because some of the community just felt, bottom line, that there might have been some assistance with him. I mean, that was probably our bigger concern, honestly, that it wasn't just one young youth doing this at an early part of the morning. And I think that was the overall concern that many of us
Yeah,
have.
I think we feel pretty confident to know it was him. It was just him.
Let
Okay.
me follow up
Thank
with
you.
a question in the
You're welcome.
chat,
Thank you.
which is what progress is being made, if any, by the vandalism of the church in Scotland? That happened just a couple of days ago. We saw some really disturbing video. There was a group of people who were breaking into that poor little church.
Yeah, I mean, we're still really working with the public and the community to provide us any leads. We've had very few leads on this case so far, but our detectives are continuously working on this case. It's very troubling, but again, we're going to need some participation or some assistance from the public to, and we'll continue to try to get that message out to people, and in a sense to maybe help to try to identify that. I think we're working on increasing a reward for those who will come forth with information. So yeah, we're still working on that actively.
Thank you so much. Mr. Abraham, Emmanuel Abraham, do you have a question? Emmanuel Abraham. Okay, we'll go on. Chief, this question I've asked you many, many times. Do we have a gang problem in Montgomery County?
So I will say this, we still have gangs that are still engaged in Montgomery County. MS-13 is still alive and well. I will say we have had a different approach to our gang issues over the past few years. And I think that approach has assisted us with maintaining a little bit more of a idea of those who are involved in the gang life. When we look at gangs, we talk about the transnational gangs, such as an MS-13, but you also have other groups that are more neighborhood gangs that have caused some problems for us. So the answer to that is it a major problem? My answer will be no. Is it still a problem? The answer is yes. And so again, I have two different gang units. We're looking at this from an approach of looking at investigating these cases that are I've got investigators who have boots on the ground, who go to communities when we have shootings. We had one in right off of New Hampshire Avenue, down off of Colony Road in late November or early November. I know our gang unit has been actively engaged in that investigation. Again, working with our partners over in Prince George's County, because Langley Park, MS-13, there's no boundaries. So they're continuing to cross jurisdictional lines. And we have to continue to monitor that. So, and we are doing that. So I just want to let everyone know that we're still focusing on that problem.
Then a practical question and issue. Members in our community in sort of East County, downtown Silver Spring, at least over the course of the last 5 or 6 months, we've heard, gunshots at all hours of the evening. What's the appropriate thing for residents to do when they hear the windows are open, they're outside, and they hear gunshots? What would you like us to do?
Well, first and foremost, I want you to be safe, and I want you to feel like, get into a safe place and stay low. But I would encourage you to call. I don't want people to make the assumption that this becomes a sort of a, oh, well, we hear this all the time, there's no need for me to pick up the phone. We encourage everyone that if you heard gunshots, to please call us. We are responding. I noted this, when I was talking about the guns. We are unfortunately sometimes going out when we find the actual gun, the crime scene. We're actually finding shell casings to these semi-automatic weapons at times. And these shell cases are actually collected by our officers. They're submitted to our crime lab, and we're putting them into a regional database with ATF and helping us to solve other crimes. So your calls are not in vain per se. There's a reason why we need to go to those areas where these shots are being fired, because sometimes we're finding that the very gun used in a particular shooting that we actually recovered a gun was used in a shooting that you may have occurred in your neighborhood. So encourage people to still continue to call us.
Thank you so much. Question from Alicia J. Unmute, please, and ask your question.
Thank you, Chief Jones, for making yourself available and answering our questions. I actually put my question in the chat, and it refers to your comments earlier about the difficulty with maintaining the necessary number of officers in the county. And you discussed recruitment-related challenges. I was wondering whether there were retention metrics and whether the challenge is also around retention, and similarly to the measures taken in terms of increasing salaries, are there other measures being taken to promote retention, such as training, promotional opportunities? And so can you comment on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So retention clearly was a major issue prior to the county executive and the county council approving the most recent pay increase. And it's not the only driving force that why officers sometimes will leave. We're doing exit interviews and finding why are individuals leaving. But what we found, interesting enough, is that in some cases, we've had officers that actually left us thought that the grass was greener on the other side, went to another agency or went to another profession, did not like it and have come back. And so not that that has been a large number of people, but it does show that I think our department still shows that people still know that they have the ability, that there are opportunities because we're a large department. In some of the smaller departments, you don't have the opportunities that you have here with promotion, with career advancement and specialized units. And I think those individuals sometimes see that. So again, we are taking all of the information that we're getting from our exit interviews and really sort of kind of digesting that in order to help to address some of those strategies in order to make sure that we're talking to not only the county executive, but also the county council, so they're aware that if there's other things that we need to focus on to improve, to make sure that people are staying within our department, that at least they're aware that there may be some solutions that we can put out there that can resolve some of that and keep many of our people that are committed to our department to stay here.
Thank you for that question. Mr. Abraham, we're going to try your question again. Please unmute and ask your question. Well, that didn't appear to work. If you post your question quickly in the chat, we'll ask the chief. Chief, as we close this program with you, all right, any final words you'd like to say to this good group, this large group of residents who care about public safety? How can we help MCPD do a better job?
Sure. So again, I want to thank again the Civic Federation. You all have been fabulous partners, and I appreciate some of the great questions tonight. Again, I think what's important is that as you can share the information that we shared with you, as I've shared tonight, and communicating with many members of our community. Again, we are still looking for great people to work for our department, not only in our as police officers, but also in many other of our over 700 professional staff jobs, such as our emergency communication center. And some of you all can be some of our best recruiters, as I tell our officers that we encourage people that to be able to really shine a light on I think a really great police agency, and it's great to work here. So we're really, again, your partnerships mean the world to us, to keep Montgomery County a safe place. It's been a pleasure of mine to serve as the chief, to know that even though we have our problems in our particular communities, when I look at our regional partners and I look at their crime rates, Montgomery County is a safe place to live. But we always have to, again, keep our eyes open. And if we do see something, we encourage you all to call us in order to help us to be able to solve these things as quickly as possible. So thank you again for your great partnership, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you so much, Chief. We look forward to staying in touch with you and having you back soon. Those people on the call who are interested in public safety issues will have another opportunity to talk to a representative of law enforcement on Wednesday. Safe Silver Spring is going to have its quarterly meeting with the 3rd District Commander, David McBain, and his lieutenant. So that information is on the Safe Silver Spring Facebook page, and we'll also be sending it around by email. So thanks again, Chief, for your support. We appreciate it.
Thank you all, and have a great evening. Okay, take care.
Well, thank you, everybody, for hanging with us. It's about 8:40 on a Monday night. And the other thing that we wanted to talk about this evening was we wanted to invite Senator Ben Kramer, District 19, to talk about some legislation that he's proposed for the General Assembly. I know many of you have interest in this, and I believe that Senator Kramer is on the call. Senator Kramer, there you are. Let me give you a spotlight. Thank you, Ben, for joining us this evening. You've been a good friend of the Civic Fed for many years. We appreciate all the work that you've done on our behalf, especially around the transparency and accountability issues. And I know that this legislation addresses those kinds of issues. Many people have contacted members of our executive committee saying, let's hear from Senator Kramer about this legislation. All of us have gone through the ordeal of the last year dealing with the planning board controversies, the county council controversies, the questions that we had about Thrive, and our feeling that the process was not transparent and that the community didn't have an opportunity to engage. Looks like some of your legislation will address those issues. So let me give you the floor, and please tell us what you've proposed, and hopefully you can stay around and answer some questions from some of our members.
Well, thank you for that, Alan. Good evening to all of you. I have always appreciated the great working relationship that I have with the Montgomery County Civic Federation. A lot of the work that I have done in the legislature began with members of this organization reaching out to me and expressing their concerns. And quite frankly, the bills that I plan on introducing to the delegation this Thursday night have come from a lot of the members of this organization saying, you know what, it's time. We need to look at how we are doing, what we are doing with regard to land use and planning. And I think the debacle that has been park and planning over the last couple of months, resulting in all of the commission members being told resign or you'll be fired, has been the catalyst to our saying, yeah, okay, maybe it is time to take a look at how we handle land use and planning in the county. Folks, the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission was created in the 1920s. At that time, Montgomery County and Prince George's County combined, the populations barely exceeded that of Allegheny County. Montgomery County had 35,000 residents when the commission was created. Well, here we are in the 21st century with 1.2 million people in our county. And the bills that I have are, one, to take a look at, is park and planning the best way for us to handle land use and planning in Montgomery County? And Lord knows, I have heard lots and lots of complaints for years about the commission, the way they ride roughshod over the residents of the county and don't really have any interest in working with our residents and addressing the important issues of how. So I know the hour is late. I'll try to be brief, although that's a little bit of a challenge with these bills. But the first one is fairly simplistic. That bill would create a task force. And the task force is charged with, number one, looking at the feasibility of transferring the duties of the planning board to Montgomery County government. And the second is that they make recommendations on how that might be accomplished. Now, to his credit, our county executive looked at my legislative proposal and said, yeah, I think that this is worth a conversation. We should maybe look at whether there's a better way to do this that helps connect the residents, the public, more closely to the process than this independent quasi-state agency that answers to nobody. So if citizens have a concern, a complaint about our Park and Planning Commission, oh, well, sorry to hear that. Have a happy day. So, do we even look at possible change, reform? Well, I guess by virtue of the county executive supporting this legislation, we immediately had those on our county council who are busy posturing for their future political endeavors immediately start attacking this bill as somehow being a power grab by the county executive. Yet they cannot point to a single word in the bill that would give them reason to be able to make such an assertion. I was at the county council today, folks, 12:30. I was invited, I thought, to have a conversation with our county council because there were folks who said, oh, this is a power grab by the county executive. The sky is falling. There's all kinds of horrible things that will befall us. And it was originated with the council. So I said, sure, I'll come meet with you today. What I discovered when I went there is that the first 20 minutes had nothing to do with a conversation. It dealt with my listening to county council members tell me what a horrible plan this was, how destructive, and that everything that I wanted to discuss with them and share, that let's actually look at the language of the bill. They weren't interested. It fell on deaf ears. I sat there and listened to them tell me how I should have never introduced this, etc. And then when I tried to engage in conversation, I was subsequently cut off. When I tried to share with them, hey, you all have yet to touch the surface of what the bill's about, they didn't want to have that conversation. I was not permitted to engage any further with the council, and that was the event. So once again, this first bill does nothing more than create a task force to look at what is the feasibility of unwinding Montgomery County's side of park and planning, and can it be accomplished? How can it be accomplished? And maybe some of it should, maybe some of it should not. I think at the end of the day, there are huge savings, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to the taxpayers in the county. And I think we would create greater opportunity for the residents to have some say and input, greater say and input in the process. So the bill also provides who the members of the task force are. I shared with the council today because, again, part of the uproar from them was, oh, but there's more people who are going to be from the county executive side than on the county council side appointed to this task force. I tried to share with them that the logic there was that I had never envisioned that the council would jump on this as being, oh, it's a power grab by the county executive, and the county council, are going to be left out in the cold. So when I looked at the composition, it includes the county executive, it includes the president of the council, it includes the chair of park and planning. It also includes the department heads in the county who would have to be responsible for blending in those services that came out of park and planning, like some of the land use and planning processes and permitting services. So yes, let's have the director of permitting services on the task force. It also says, let's have the director of parks and recreation in the county on the task force, because if we're going to be pulling those facilities into the county. And by the way, every single jurisdiction in the state of Maryland does it this way, with the exception of Montgomery County and Prince George's, which have this, again, quasi-independent government agency that answers to nobody. So somehow the other 22 jurisdictions in the state have managed to do this successfully. And I'm not saying that at the end of the day, it might be the best way to go. But how would we even know if we're not willing to take a look and have the conversation? So at the end of the day, the task force does not change law at all. We would actually have to introduce legislation to change that. And I see somebody was asking, it's MCPG 104-23. I'll repeat that. MC/PG 104-23 that I'm discussing at the moment. And with regard to this whole notion that the county executive is looking to usurp council authority, under the bill, the recommendations don't even happen until December of 2024. That means even if we took those recommendations and immediately introduced legislation to maybe make some of these changes, nothing's going to happen until at the very, very earliest 2026. So this county executive, this county council will be at the end of their term. So there is nothing here that gives our county executive a power grab under this bill, neither in the language of the bill nor its implementation timing. This county executive's term will have ended. This county council's terms will have ended. I can't speak to what the future will be and who our elected officials might be, but certainly the notion that this is something nefarious here is ludicrous. However, our county council saw fit to vote against this bill. It was either a 10-to-1 vote, a unanimous vote. I can't tell you. They always try to do their business unanimously, so they give each other plenty of cover. So that is the first bill, the task force. The second bill, good Lord, they voted against this one also. And this bill, for those of you who are interested, it's MCPG 105-23, 105-23, addresses the desperate need for transparency in our Park and Planning Commission. It requires simplistic things like posting for the public ahead of the hearings, the conversation that the Park and Planning Commission is going to be discussing. It requires that Park and Planning Commission members can't participate in political campaigns for candidates or themselves. And the point here being, do we want anyone on Park and Planning who's got control over a development project before them out there fundraising for somebody who's supported by the development community? And therefore, you know, there's this sense of we have to pay to play. Let's take that off the table. This is all about transparency and good governance. It also prohibits a member of the commission from who's had a hearing before them on land use policy from then leaving the commission and immediately going to work for the entity that had that project before them. You know, the revolving door piece, it applies to me. If I were to leave tomorrow, I can't become a lobbyist for a year. The point is, we do not want people with authority to be making decisions based on they're being hired the following day by the entity that's got the issue before the commission. But our council voted against it, folks. It also would provide that we actually have a little parity in how the commissioners are appointed. The county council will still appoint the commissioners, but this affords the county executive the opportunity to appoint the chair of the planning board. It requires the county executive confirm what the council does. It requires the council confirm that the county executive's appointment. Nothing can be done unilaterally without the opportunity for the other side to weigh in. It would also restore the limitation we had up until just a few years ago that no commissioner can serve more than 2 consecutive terms. I think that has proven to have been a mistake when that change was made. I think that the goal here is to create the tiniest bit of parity between the executive branch and the council in these very important roles, positions that have a role in everyone's lives into how this county is taking shape. And so I'm guessing maybe I would have thought maybe that's the most controversial piece of this. The council's got their, they're hanging on to their power. And in Prince George's County, the county executive makes all the appointments. What this bill is hoping to provide is, how about a little bit of opportunity for parity and to ensure that our public is more closely tied to the events and the outcomes, the decisions that this commission makes. And it also provides that commissioners, if there is a reason to do so, the county executive or the county council can look to discipline or remove a commissioner. It can't happen without the support of both sides, but it provides now a process, a public process, by which we would then have the opportunity as residents to hear, what is it that is problematic with this commissioner? And does that commissioner want the opportunity to speak in a public forum and explain what it is that they believe is the logic behind what they may have done and why it may not have been problematic? So, the goal here, it also requires the commission post their minutes and comments about their minutes. This is all about transparency. And I will share with you that this is the same Park and Planning Commission that fought me tooth and nail to get an inspector general appointed to the commission, and they have done everything they can to minimize the value of that inspector general within the commission. So with that, like I said, I know it's getting late. I don't want to go on too long. But folks, I can assure you that the purpose and the intent of this legislation is not a power grab for our county executive. It is about good governance and opportunities to have the conversation about, can we do it better? 100 years later, from 35,000 to 1.2 million residents, could we be doing this better? I think it's a conversation worth having. And I also think that at the very least, we should put in these provisions with regard to transparency and good governance in the other bill. So having said that, once again, our county council overwhelmingly killed the bills. I was very disappointed. I actually thought I was being invited to have a legitimate conversation about these two bills, and was very disappointed to see that that was certainly not the case. So with that, Alan, thank you. I see a few hands are raised, and I'm happy to answer questions.
We'll call on people in the chat. I just want to say, Senator Kramer, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We feel your pain in the way that the county council responded to you today. Thousands of Montgomery County residents, hundreds of people who support the Civic Federation tried to engage the county council on a broad range of issues over the course of the last 18 months to 24 months. And we were very frustrated and disappointed in the weak Albernes Council. Let me start with Carrie Lamari. Carrie, unmute and ask a short question, please.
All of a sudden, how are you, Ben?
Hey, Carrie, how are
Good
you,
to
my
see you.
friend?
You know, we had this conversation about park and planning back last January, so you're not just rushing to a conclusion here. You know,
Correct.
you've given a comprehensive discussion, and the fact of the matter is, the planning board or the park and planning commission was established what, 1928, something to that
27.
effect. Do we need
27.
do we need a police department today in park and planning? And we've heard the chief talk about the problems that are plaguing the Montgomery County Police Department. Maybe we should, bring the funds over there, put it underneath the chief's control. Do we need ethics in the Park and Planning Commission, or should they be responsible to arbitrarily decide what's ethical, what's not ethical? I think that's just outrageous. And like you said, we've been plagued with the same kind of problems. Apparently the public doesn't understand. We've been told this time and time again. We don't understand. It's complicated. We just need to allow them to do their job. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the state created the Park and Planning Commission. It is the state's job to determine whether modifications should occur. I'm hoping, Patricia Johnson asked you a very good question in chat. I'm hoping that it's not dead at this point, that simply because the county council chose to vote against it, that the General Assembly will take it to the next level. Is this correct, Ben? Can we rely on that? And let me say one thing more. Thank you, Ben, for doing this. Okay.
Well, Carrie, thank
Carrie.
you. And yes, you and I had this conversation a year ago. We began, look, I have been contemplating the merits of this for quite some time, because I hear from so many of our residents with their dissatisfaction with how the process is working. With regard to, look, it will be up to the delegation to determine whether that is at all meaningful to them or not. I will do my best to dissuade my colleagues of the weight that they may want to give this. In other words, say, hey, look, this is a county council that already talked itself into a position before they ever sat down with me. 2 weeks ago, when they first took up this bill, about the county executives looking to seize power and bring the end to the world as we know it. When I was called on Friday and said, hey, are you willing to come in and have a conversation with the council on Monday? I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so, my sentiment is the county council's welcome to do what the county council wants to do. As I indicated, my goal today was simply to say, hey, folks, how about a non-position? They've got another 2 months before our delegation takes the matter up. So my sentiment was, why don't you hear the public testimony on Thursday night? Why don't you listen and not make rash judgments? And they went ahead and made their decision. So I would say, no, by no means is the bill dead. It may not even be harmed, quite frankly. You know, the delegation may look at it and go, you know what? Thanks, County Council. By the way, the county executive is in full support.
Right.
And what I can tell you is, I anticipate there's going to be some former commissioners. We've got the ones that we would expect to hear from go, oh my God, this is terrible. It's, you know, I heard about, oh, we've got blue ribbons and awards and trophies. And my comment today at the council was, you know, those are beautiful decorations for the wall. But at the end of the day, does that make life better for the residents of Montgomery County? And I said, my answer is no, it does not. So I would ask that any and all of you who are willing to sign up, and it's going to be via Zoom. Last week's hearing by our delegation was in person. This Thursday night at Zoom, it's easy peasy. If nothing else, sign up and say, hey, listen, what is it that the Park and Planning Commission is so afraid of? What is the county council so afraid of? That they would not even allow, that they would vote unanimously against having the conversation about having transparency in the actions. What are they so afraid of? It's
Let's
a good
ask-
question.
Let's ask other people to comment. Janice, you go next, please. Unmute. Thank you.
Good evening, Janice Sartucci with the Parents Coalition. I was quite involved in the County Council Planning Board issues that went on in the last couple of months, and was interviewed a couple times and was getting documents, getting names released. And so I guess what I would say is that the council has not to date reviewed what happened then. They haven't had any sort of an inquiry or hearings or investigation of exactly what led that entire incident to occur. And I would also say that the county council has members that have incredible conflicts of interest that frankly shouldn't be opening their mouths at all on this issue, because current and new, past members that are still on the council and new members could easily have had information about what was going on in park and planning, could even have been in Casey Anderson's in-office bar. We haven't heard from them at all what their experience was. They could be complicit in whatever was going on at the county council, and we've had no evaluation. So any vote from that body at this point, without a number of the members recusing themselves, I would say is a farce. And going even further, when the county council, the members that were previously on the council and are still on the council, were involved in the replacement process, they were violating Maryland law on the appointment process left and right. They violated every section they could find of the law with impunity, and there was no oversight. I even went to the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, what was left of it, the Prince George's side, and said, hey, can you help? And they said, nah, no, that's the county council. I went to Brian Frosch. Can you help? No, I can't. There wasn't anybody to say the county council needed to follow the law. So they have absolutely no credibility. And I will just add, they put someone on their finalist list who lived in Colorado. So they were this close to appointing somebody to our planning board that didn't even live here. So I would say whatever votes they took today have absolutely no meaning whatsoever, because that body is completely disqualified themselves from any discussions about the planning board. So you have 3 bills, and Thursday night is the local hearing. If I want to speak about all 3 bills, do I just get 1 slot? Do I get 3 slots? What can I do? What can anyone do to support you Thursday evening? What is the best we can do at this point to help you? What would you like?
Janice, I would ask that you please sign up for the two bills that I referenced tonight. I do have some other bills that are related to the collective bargaining process that will be heard. But these two bills will quite possibly be heard separately. I am going to have a conversation with my House counterpart about would we maybe save everybody some time and energy, affording those who want to speak on both bills simultaneously to do so. But I will have to have that conversation. But yes, I would ask that you please do sign up and show your support and the fact that, yes, where was our county council? Because the fact of the matter is, park and planning does not have oversight. They quite simply do not. And the county council doesn't focus on what they're doing. And that's how we have ended up where we are today. And I don't see it getting better unless we are at least taking a very hard look at what is in, and again, I will gain nothing out of this. The county executive is not going to personally gain. I believe the county executive came out and said, I'm supporting both of these bills because they're good governance measures. And by virtue of the exec saying he's on board, I end up with this county council that goes overboard on the other side saying, oh, there's something secret. There's manipulation happening here. So please, yes, if you would come and express your thoughts, I very much would appreciate it. And feel free to take a look at this afternoon's hearing. If you didn't get a chance, you go to YouTube, Google Montgomery County Council, and at 39 minutes is when I first begin to offer my thoughts on the first bill that they brought up, which is the collective bargaining, but then it shortly rolls into the other bills where you'll see, when I thought I was there for a conversation, I was there to have them talk down to me and share with me their offense, their feigned offense at my even bringing these bills to the delegation.
Let's move on. Thank you, Janice. Elizabeth Joyce, a short question, please.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank you so much, Senator Kramer, because we've had a great deal of difficulty in getting attention to these issues and to the extraordinary scope of this problem. And what you have done is, from my point of view, a great public service. And I just want to thank you for that and ask you what we can do to help you, because I think the facts about these issues, as you say, this is a 100-year-old charter, which was, by the way, established by the Lee family to promote their own interests 100 years ago. Is this the way we want to run our county now? I don't think so. So the issue is, what's the problem? What are the proposed solutions? And how do we pass those solutions so that this council, which for the last 3 years has ignored thousands and thousands of emails from constituents objecting to what they want to do, for whatever reason, they haven't explained it to us. We would like them to sit down with us in a room and answer our questions. They won't. They just vote against what we think they should do and what good government people think should be at least on the table. So I want to thank you and ask you what we can do to help you.
Elizabeth, thank you for that. And you were spot on. In the 1920s, it was about the land barons and the power brokers creating a system that was in their best interest to maximize the financial benefit of their land holdings. And here we are 100 years later with that same process and an unwillingness by the council to even listen. I would ask, your question is, what would I ask of you? Every single one of you has a senator and 3 state delegates that will be voting on this legislation. Please tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday. Send them emails to their email addresses and say that you have every expectation that they will act on the best interests of the residents of the county to move forward and support on common sense, good governance legislation, and that they will be held accountable as far as you're concerned. I will again reiterate, this is not going to be taken up by the delegation probably until late January, early February. So there will be a need at an appropriate point in time, and I can connect to Alan and let him know when that is. But to once again say, okay, in case you forgot, I'm, supporting this legislation, and here's why, here's the merits. And we can't let the self-interests carry the day. And that's what this is about. The self-interest of those on the council and the self-interest of those at Park and Planning who are looking out for their own best interests, not your best interest. And that's got to be the messaging.
Let's move on. I can tell you, Senator Kramer, that the Civic Federation is going to testify in support of your bills. And I know many of our members are going to be testifying as individuals. So thank you so much. Let me ask you this question that I've had. As you mentioned before, the commission doesn't have anybody to supervise it. There's no accountability beyond the chairs of the commission. One of the issues that came up, I see that Amanda Farber is on this call and she's got some experience with this, is that when we suggested there might be some ethics violations, it turns out the commission had responsibility for policing its own ethics violations. That's a problem. People at the State Ethics Commission would love to have the bilateral or the bi-county organizations under in their portfolio. So I don't know if it's too late, but maybe you can look to the issue of having the bi-county organizations ethics process go up to the State Ethics Commission rather than having policing themselves.
Actually, Alan, I believe the State Ethics Commission does have the ability to look at violations, but it's a very limited window of violations that they would be looking at. So I think we'll hear a little bit more about that on Thursday evening at the hearing, but I believe the state ethics can, in fact, weigh in, but there's a very, like I said, limited window of areas that they can get involved in. And it certainly doesn't relate to the day-to-day, I would say, misoperations of what we have been seeing. So
there'll be a little bit more about ethics with some of our speakers who are coming up, or questioners who are coming up, because I know that Carrie and Amanda had made, and we had a conference call with the woman who handles those things, and they would like to have a bigger remit when it comes to Park and Planning and the commission. Next question, Quint, please unmute and ask your question to Senator Kramer.
Quite remind, I'm with the Cloverleaf Civic Association, and I guess I've been involved with the park planning for 25 years. So I've seen a lot of things that have gone on there for 25 years. And I must say, the way things started out, it was wonderful. We had a lot of participation in development of our master plans and so forth. And in the past 10 years, things have gone steadily downhill. I started making complaints, why were the meetings that the board was doing, why were they slanted so that we couldn't present our positions? Why were we asked to participate what our complaints were against a project before we even knew what the project was? And basically the rest of the meeting was to prove that we were wrong. That whole thing that has been done to so many people in the county, it was a modus of operation. And I see what's happened right now is we don't even know what happened to Park and Planning, really, why they, what the underlying things are. We sure know a lot of things were wrong there and were done wrong there. And I think I support you 100%. This is fantastic. This is what needs to be done. If anything, it needs to be done faster, and the citizens of Montgomery County are not going to be protected for 4 years or even longer, and that's not good. There needs to be a halt to what's going on right now. And if this continues to, I see right now, there's a coup in all the things that Park and Planning was doing. Now the council wants to take over and be the lead. And what benefit do we have for that? I mean, they've already appointed a board that they had complete control over. They did it illegally. They didn't do it. They didn't go through the proper channels and interviews and so forth, and hiring these temporary people. It's just going to be one parade of, we have to do this because we got to get it done. And I hope that we can work together and we can start developing maybe some other legislation that people might be more aghast at what's been going on there. Than this is just the tip of the iceberg right now. And I think that it's very distressing that the council opposes your bill. I think, who's got something to hide? They've got something to hide. So, and we know what some of those things are. They've come out in public discourse, but there's plenty more that could come out. And I'm sure they don't want to hear it.
And the transparency bill, by the way, would require public hearings when these appointments are made. Because you're right. And too much of this takes place behind closed doors. And the whole business with the council demanding the resignation of all of the commissioners, it all happened behind closed doors. The transparency bill will prevent that from happening again in the future. It will have to take place in public so that the residents of the county have a far better understanding of what is happening and be able to weigh in on the process. So thank you. I appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you, Quentin. Sharon Campbell. Unmute. There you go.
Senator Kramer, thank you so much for creating and pursuing this legislation. And I'll do my best to be there Thursday and testify if possible. That is, online. I own and live at Leisure World and have had the very same problem for years with the Planning Commission, and they even ignored a 2,000+ person petition from Leisure World against a new building here. And it's, happened across the county for practically every issue that comes before them. So it's far wider than this enormous Thrive project, although it's so bad. It's literally everything. Your bills seem to be quite fair to me on all sides. Nothing's perfect, but it seems quite fair. So this infighting is ridiculous to me. It does not serve the residents. I will definitely tomorrow email my senator and 3 delegates. And I really,
if you live in Leisure World, that's me. I'll save you having to send me the email, but feel free to send it to my House colleagues.
I will. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sharon. Carol Ann.
Well, then, thank you so much for going to bat again after all these years that you've been helping us try to get the penalty of perjury bill, which even that was a step too far, right? Requiring developers to sign the same way that we sign when we fill out a ballot or pay our taxes or 100 other things. I just want to remind everybody that as horrible as it is, when most of us go before this agency with no control, and their MO is to literally yell at citizens for having the temerity to express an opinion. Just literally yell at them. put a park policeman in the back of the room whenever I come to testify, because I'm so scary. This openly flout state and local laws, knowingly and openly flout them. As bad as all this is and as horrible as Thrive is, let's not forget that this is the same uncontrolled agency that took Farm Road properties out from under the African American kinship community that had been there for more than 100 years. And there was no place to go because there is absolutely no oversight and no control. And so as badly as all of us have been affected, they have done much, much worse to some communities and to some members of the community, as you all know, Ben. So this is just really crucial. And thank you so much for going to bat for it in spite of all the lumps we've taken the last few years trying to chip away at this.
Thank you, Carol Ann. Amanda? Amanda?
Hi,
Amanda?
thanks, Alan. Sorry, I was just trying to unmute. Senator Kramer, thank you for being here tonight. I've been following things closely, and I watched the council meeting earlier today. I applaud you for taking on these initiatives, and I was disappointed in the reception that you were given at the council. I listened, and the council narrative has been that these problems are really only, recent and only personnel related. And really, the events at Park and Planning boiled over recently, but that pot had been boiling for quite some time. So as an example, so I'm the resident who realized that MCPD wasn't following the state lobbying laws. And I attempted to report it in September 2021. And let me tell you, it was a maze. And I definitely got the runaround in trying to report it through the state ethics office, through MCPD IG office, and finally got some attention about it. It took until January 2022 for it to really come to light. And it also took some media attention. And so now, almost a year later, after MCPD has said that they would start following state lobbying laws, there are only 6 registered lobbyists for the entirety of MCPD. And the only way to find that out is through a Public Information Act request. Whereas the council, the state, even WSSC has that information available on their websites. So they make that difficult. And I just wanted to say one last thing about predetermined decisions, because I think a lot of us have experienced that going into hearings at the planning board. And some folks may have followed, but the other day at the council, new council member Kristen Mink spoke to how, now that she's a council member, she's privy to the fact that there's a lot of decisions being made behind the scenes. And so I noted that because the council was at that time was saying, we really want to try to be more transparent. This was literally last week at the council. We want to be more transparent. We want to have less decisions being made behind the scenes. And yet here you are taking this initiative to help make that happen. And you faced a lot of opposition from those same people. So I just wanted to make that point. And thank you again. And I plan to testify on Thursday.
Thank you, Amanda. Jerry Garson?
This is Jerry Garson. I already signed up to testify on behalf of the transparency, the commission restructuring task force bill, like I have for many other bills that Ben Kramer has sponsored, including the one on the intern, but Inspector General for Park and Planning and the Inspector General for WSSC. So if anyone else is going to testify, you have to testify not on behalf of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, Jerry, you are a representative for that. I'm sure everybody else can testify as an individual. You made a reference, Jerry, to Senator Kramer's work on the IG. I think one of the things we discovered over the course of the last 18 months was that the MCPD, the Commission IG, could be a stronger operation than it is. So we put that on the table. If a light goes off and there's something else you can do to make that stronger. Part of its personalities and, you know, who's the incumbent, but having subpoena power was a good step, but it seems as if the Inspector General couldn't really get down to the meat of things over the course of the difficulties that we had over the last year. Carrie, would you like to say something else?
Yeah, one thing. I had long conversations with Catherine Thompson of the State Ethics Commission, and it was explained to me, although at one point they thought they had some leverage over top of the planning board, that the staff was they thought the staff was under the County Ethics Commission. They later found out that they have no control, that the Park and Planning Commission itself, when I say that, that's both Montgomery and PG, has ultimate authority over what is ethical, what is
Ask
not
somebody to
ethical,
mute themselves, please. If you're not talking, please mute yourself.
what is ethical and what is not ethical for the Park and Planning Commission. I would respect, I know that they have a folder. And when I say a folder that they're keeping on Park and Planning and on issues that are questionable. I would respectfully request you give them a call, because that in and of itself would justify a task force to simply review, after 100 years, do we need some changes? So Ben, thank you, my friend.
We had a Zoom conversation with Catherine, was it, Carrie? Catherine Thompson. Yeah, we had a Zoom with Catherine Thompson from the State Ethics Commission. We recorded that. That's available on our Facebook page and hopefully on our website. So Senator Kramer, you can see there's a lot of interest from the civic community on this issue. We've been struggling with getting our views before the council, before the commission for years. And when we do, our opinions and our suggestions are really discarded and pushed to the side. So there's immense value in what you're trying to do, and we will support you with these bills and look forward to continuing the conversation. Anybody else have any question for Senator Kramer, who was kind enough to join us on short notice?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is something that we think, unfortunately now we think about this all the time. And so we're glad that somebody is paying attention to this, and you've been a hero for us. We've recognized you many times before, and thank you so much for carrying our water when it comes to this issue. And I think you'll see many of us online on Thursday night. It's the priorities hearing, is that right?
Yes, it's this Thursday evening. I don't recall whether it starts at 7 or 7:30 p.m., but it's this Thursday evening. I think you'll need to sign. I would suggest signing up by tomorrow. I don't know what the cutoff deadline is.
It's 24 hours. I went to the website while we were having this conversation to put the link to the delegation page. I asked about priorities because there were two things you could click on, and one was the priorities hearing. So if that's it, that's what people need to do.
The priorities hearing may be what we had
last week
previously.
Everybody,
this-
you need to go to
This
that
is bill
website.
hearing. This is local and bi-county bill hearings. Priorities we already had, Al.
Thank you for that clarification. So everybody, you need to go to that website and don't click on priorities, click on the other one and sign up to testify on the bill. And we will be paying attention. Any closing words for us, Senator Kramer?
No, I just want to say thank you. Look, as I had indicated, I have always felt a very strong, cordial relationship with the Montgomery County Civic Federation. It's always been a very good working relationship, and your voices do need to be heard. And I share your frustration on many of these matters, and want to see if maybe we can make progress. And that's what this is about. Like I said, it's good governance. And I wouldn't be pursuing if I didn't think it would do well for the residents of the county and make things better for all of us. So with that, pardon me, thank you for taking the time at this late hour to stay up and listen to me. Everybody stay healthy, stay well. I'll look forward to those of you joining us on Thursday evening, and I wish everyone the very best for the holiday season. Stay healthy.
Thank you so much, Senator Kramer. For those of you who are remaining on the call, our meeting, technically goes to 10 o'clock. We can adjourn earlier, but I know that there were some people who had some other concerns they wanted to raise with the body. And Peggy, you had an issue you wanted to talk about. Peggy Dennis, you wanted to talk about elections and officers?
Yes. We have been in a situation where Alan has been doing an excellent job, but he's well into his third year. And technically, presidents are only supposed to hold office for 2 consecutive terms. We discussed this briefly, and I pointed out that there was a point in the past when nobody would agree to serve as a candidate for president. And I said, well, I'll serve again, but you have to agree to amend the bylaws to take out that restriction. And Charles Wolf said, no, let's not amend the bylaws. Let's keep the bylaws the way they are and simply vote to waive the bylaws in your case so that you can carry on and serve for a 3rd term. I suggest we should discuss either doing that with Alan or moving on and getting a new president in under the current bylaws. And if the person who is currently serving as first vice president is not willing to step up to be the president, then why not have our very capable second vice president step up? I think it just needs to be discussed and acted on rather than being ignored and brushed under the carpet month after month.
Thank you, Peggy. We'll take it up at our executive committee meeting. Executive committee members will send out an email, but our next executive committee meeting would be next Thursday. Jerry Garson can't participate. We'd like to have it on Wednesday instead. Hopefully that will work, and we'll sort that out by email. Thank you.
If you do it on Wednesday, you're very capable second vice president will not be able to attend.
All right, we'll sort it out by email because we can change the time or something like that. But we were scheduled to have one for Thanksgiving, and then we sort of worked around that.
I'm not available on Wednesdays.
I'm not available on Wednesday or Thursday. I'll be out of the county, out of the state.
All right, so that's just not helpful, but we'll try to work out something by email. And thank you for letting us know. This is at a time where we would go through committee reports. And does anybody have anything they'd like to raise to our audience? I want to give Eric Cathcart. Eric, I saw you still here. Yeah, Eric is still here. I want Eric to just talk about the holiday event that he and South Four Corners did on Saturday. I understand it was very successful, and it's another example of our Civic Association members, working hard to engage the community. Eric, can you tell us briefly about what you did at Parkside on Saturday?
Briefly, we gave ourselves permission to work with another civic association, and we created a phenomenal event. It benefited 30 local artists who kept 100% of the proceeds of their sales. It was actually a sellout event. It was a 4-hour event, and most of the vendors sold out of their goods, either baked goods or crafts by noon. So it was a bit of a disappointment that we couldn't keep on selling, but it proved that it was approved. The concept was proven that we can combine two civic associations, find extra synergy, find extra volunteers, and put on and create a community event for the greater community. So I'm absolutely tickled and thrilled that it was so successful. This was our second annual holiday artisan fair, and we held it at Parkside, at the Parkside Parks. Speaking of Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning, the former Parks headquarters in our community. So thank you, Alan, for acknowledging that.
And as I understand it, you also had music?
Yeah, we had music. We had four musical acts, and yeah. So next year, we had Engine 16 show up, and we had yeah. So it's going to be huge next year. So it's already a signature event for Silver Spring.
Thank you so much. Peggy Dennis, your hand is raised.
Yes, I would like to say a few things as head of legislation concerning the 2023 state legislation agenda. May I have permission?
Sure.
Okay. There are some bills that I would like the Civic Federation to support. Last session, Delegate Love put in a bill called the Zero Emission Truck Act. It does not ban diesel trucks, but it does require manufacturers to start offering electric trucks. Can't remember what year, but it isn't immediately. The idea being to get the fleets that have large numbers of big diesel trucks, particularly those that go constantly through the areas that are low income, high minority populations and that suffer the most from the diesel fumes, to get them some relief.
Thank you. What's the next one? What's the next one, Peggy?
Okay. The beverage container deposit bill. Why can't we join the other states that do this? I would like to see, and I'm working on Mark Corman to get our lemon law amended to apply to freezers and refrigerators also. We have a lemon law for cars. We don't have anything for freezers and refrigerators. And with the warranties that are now in effect, a family can buy a freezer, fill it up, have it go in 2 or 3 months, be out of commission for a month. This can happen over and over again. And the warranties very specifically say that the manufacturer is not responsible for loss of food. It's really outrageous that this can keep going on.
Okay, next one.
Chain of custody should apply to artificial turf playing fields. We'd like to see that go through this year. I think Delegate Love, again, is putting in a bill for pedestrian safer crossings, particularly on major roads. I'm asking her to expand this to require pedestrian refuges in the middle of the large roads so that slower people and people with bicycles who cannot make it all the way across a 4 or 6 lane highway can get halfway across, wait in the refuge safely, and then carry on when the light turns again. I think that's all I need to say for the moment. I'll try to write these up in a much more comprehensive form for the next newsletter.
Thank you so much. And our priority for the county level legislation is going to be for the Office of the People's Council. We're not going to wait for the county executive to put it in the 24 budget, is that right? The 24 budget. We want a supplemental, and he said he would put it in the next budget, but we'd like to see if they can take it up earlier. Anybody else? Liz, you've got your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to say, please, everybody, read my article about the Albernos Council and what they did and what they didn't do. What they did is almost nothing. What they did that was a big problem is described in detail. I think it's really difficult to describe the magnitude of the problems that we have. And what we had this discussion tonight, Senator Kramer deserves our complete and full support because he's trying to rectify a problem that they not only refused to rectify, but have made worse. So I don't know what we can do, but I do know that in all the records of all the resolutions, all the letters that this organization has written, none of them have found their way into the county council reports. It takes a legal action, somebody to hire a lawyer to get them to even put it in the minutes of the, you know, of the county council. So we have a huge struggle in our hands. And to me, there's no more important issue than this because it goes to all sorts of disrespect for the constituents and disrespect for the financial interests of most of community residents. And what they've been proposing will not help the people that they say they're going to help. And the county executive has been really accurate about that. So I just hope that we can figure out ways to address this, because this is not a side issue. This is like the most important issue that we have, because it's like the indicator, it's the litmus test of everything they're doing wrong. And today, if you read Adam Pagnuccio's article about what happened today, Senator Kramer was very tame with us tonight, but he was outraged today at this council meeting. And I assume it's because they attacked him so outrageously for simply trying to hold them accountable. So we have a big crisis on our hands. And I think this is one of our biggest challenges for the next year.
Thank you for that. Jerry, do you have a question or comment? You're unmuted.
Well, I want to speak on the Transportation Committee.
Go ahead.
We just saw last week that the Washington, D.C. County Council, I call it City Council, passed a bill requiring free ride-on bus service in Washington, D.C. I hope the Civic Federation in the future can actually reaffirm that we support free ride-on service and free WMATA bus service in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Jerry. Anybody else have anything they want to share with the audience? So today, we did some special outreach. So we got up to 80 participants. That's good for us. Zoom seems to be working. I don't know that we're ready for in-person meetings in Rockville yet. This is very cost effective, and we're able to engage people throughout the county more easily. We do need help at the leadership level. We need people to volunteer to be committee chairs, to be at-large members of the executive committee, to be officers. So if you're interested, please contact any members of the executive committee. Those of you who represent civic associations or homeowners association and haven't renewed for the 22-23 membership year, please do that. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's very important for us to say that we advocate on behalf of tens of thousands of people and individuals. Those of you who are here as guests, who don't belong to homeowners associations or civic associations, and you want to join as an individual, it's not very expensive, and we would love to help you, love to have you, and we'd love to have your money so we can do our work. On Friday of this week, Jerry Garson, Liz Joyce, and I are going to be attending the Committee for Montgomery legislative breakfast, which is held every year. The Civic Federation was one of the founding members of Committee for Montgomery. It's held at the Marriott in Rockville. There's usually 700, 800, 900 people there, and this year it's going to feature the incoming governor of Maryland, Wes Moore. It's expensive tickets, $150 a piece, but those of you who are interested in the committee from Montgomery, I think you can still buy tickets, but maybe not. Please pay attention and we'll share information about that. If there's anybody else have anything they'd like to say, you can always write articles for our newsletter. We have a long newsletter. It can be even longer. And we try to share as much information as we can every month. Thank you, Jackie, for doing that. Peggy?
Motion to adjourn?
There's been a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? It's been first and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all. Have a happy holiday, and we're going to try to get the county executive to be our speaker at the Civic Fed meeting in January. And giving all the stuff that's going on, that'll be very interesting. Thank you very much. Happy holiday.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, guys.